Mr. Birchum, an anti-woke animated comedy, recently limped its way to the Daily Wire. It follows the adventures of a no-nonsense woodworking teacher who's had it up to here with all these triggered liberal snowflakes. Series creator Adam Carolla, fresh from a diaper change courtesy of Ben Shapiro, had this to say to Newsweek. Society is obviously different now than it was 30 years ago, but Birchum's complaints are the same. It's not the kind of show that works on many platforms because of politics. Daily Wire was a good fit. Otherwise, it might not have found a home. The essence of the show is I've depicted you as the soy dick and me as the Chad. Therefore, I win. This type of thinking typically evaporates once you win the pretend argument in the shower and go about your day, but a dark karma has manifested this energy into a cartoon with a mid-sized animation budget. I've watched the first 3 episodes, and here's how the average Mr. Birchum scene plays out. A liberal straw man will say something buffoonish. Birchum responds by angrily saying why they're stupid. The liberal straw man will either sulk away defeated or start crying. There is a lot of crying from the guys Birchum chastises. Occasionally, there might be a cutaway gag to spice things up, and this is what bugs me, or using their nomenclature makes me triggered and owned. The cutaway gags don't add any extra context or twist. They are so predictable that adding absurdist pop culture references in the style of Family Guy's manatee jokes would be an improvement. Yes, this is so flat, I am yearning for the worst parts of Family Guy. Here's some examples of cutaway jokes in Birchum. Birchum says that the table saw in his shop class is so dull, it wouldn't cut a balloon. And then they cut away to a student trying and failing to use the table saw to cut a balloon. Birchum wonders if his adult son is going to eat dino nuggies forever. He then imagines the son is an old man being fed nuggies with a robot arm. Birchum's friend, Don Gabe, says he's grunt puked on every continent except one. There's a brief montage of him hurling around the world, cut back to present day, where he shares that all that's left is Antarctica. We are then treated to a cutaway joke of him as an old man in a wheelchair throwing up on a penguin in Antarctica. He admires the northern lights before presumably passing away. That last one especially hurt because it was so damn long with zero payoff. When Gage says he's puked on every continent except one, I think, there's no way this is building to Antarctica being the only continent, the one you expect. The continent with the least amount of human contact, and there it is, Antarctica! And once we get to him imagining himself in Antarctica, the scene continues to drudge out exactly as expected. This joke setup would be the perfect opportunity to make an edgy comment about Israel-Palestine. It could be the kind of thing you could only say on a streaming platform, a sentiment guaranteed to legitimately offend people, a joke so cutting edge it farms outrage clicks from the left and approving fist pumps from the right. But all of Mr. Birchum is playing it incredibly safe. The way Carolla was hyping this up made me expect this would be like if 4chan had a baby with a Jim Crow cartoon. Instead, we got something too weak to have played on the animation domination lineup 13 years ago. And thanks to the Lost Media Forum, we now know exactly how this would have played out 13 years ago. Crash for Wampa has unearthed the original 2011 Mr. Birchum pilot made for Fox. I'll post a link in the description, because in the ultimate plot twist, this isn't that bad. I saw the potential in the plot/characters. There were a few interesting twists in the story. And yes, I laughed. I know being amused by anything even tangentially in the sphere of Daily Wire means I lose my ally card, but they were able to lob a few decent jokes in its 9-minute runtime. Just look at the difference in the opening shot between the pilot and the 2024 version. The tacked-on signage in the pilot is a neat world-building detail that sets the temperature for the broader social commentary. Meanwhile, the 2024 edition weekly informs us that the school is a safe space on their bulletin board. I don't know if there's a legal reason why they changed the sign. Like, I'm trying to think of why this particular sight gag was cut and replaced with a generic shot of a school. The characters in the pilot were roughly the same. Some of the jokes were even recycled. Are budget reasons to blame? It's more time consuming to draw the sign in the pilot than it is to throw a 3D model of a school on screen. I said Birchum 2024 had a mid-sized budget, but truthfully, it looks very, very cheap. The opening scene for both features Birchum and Gabe bantering about the upcoming school year, lamenting on the sheer disrespect of the students. 2011's version begins with the two standing on the second floor, tisk-tisking at kids these days. A student from outside flips off Birchum. He rolls his eyes and Gage says they're going the way of the crocodile. We cut to a scene of crocodiles emerging from the river, as Gage explains in a voiceover.
But 10 million years, nobody messed with crocodile. They climbed up on the riverbank to sun themselves. The whole village scattered. And then one day, out of nowhere, guys in tacky shorts start jumping on their backs. They must have been like, what the fuck is going on?
No one's afraid of us anymore, Don. Remember when we were growing up? Other kids' dads could hit you. Simpler times.
Cutting away to the crocodiles, as Gage explains, is a creative way to spice up an otherwise mundane conversation between coworkers. Subtly turning them into the crocodiles was an unexpected, funny twist. Notice that in the first shot of the crocodiles, they are not anthropomorphized at all, and you may not notice their transformation at first since your attention is on the crocodile hunter jumping into the frame from the side. It's a clever directing technique that takes advantage of the animated sitcom format.
I went on a 20-minute rant about boomers, so I've edited it out and replaced with text-to-speech. I'll just say these fellas have a pretty silly worldview.
But these directorial sleight of hand didn't have me dwelling on the overt boomerism of their opinions. It's a decent opening scene that invites you to these characters' mindset. So if we're going for empathy or propaganda, if you're firmly against the show, this honestly does a good job. Now let's see how it compares to the opening scene in the 2024 version. The scene begins with Birchum parking his car before the school day begins, and here in the parking lot, he is greeted by Gage. After some small talk, they make a friendly bet. First one to get insulted by one of the students wins. To demonstrate Gage's bad luck, the scene cuts to the two as spectators for a horse race. The track announcer informs us that the horses Gage bet on have lost. The joke being that all of them had seemingly lucky names, so it is very ironic that they lost. For extra morbidity, the losing horses are shot off screen. Again, I have to wonder why the change. Are the off-screen gun sound effects to demonstrate their edginess? Every animated sitcom has tons of jokes about animal cruelty. Here's Family Guy's take on shooting a racehorse. The violence and punchline are way bigger than Birchum's rip on the same subject.
So, how's that leg doing?
Great, never better.
Good. Why don't you try putting some weight on it?
Sure. Yes. Oh, that's good. That feels good. Very strong.
Sorry, Thunder. I gotta put you down.
How's your leg, huh? How's your leg? You ready to race? Huh?
Sorting the comments by newest, there's still people in current year popping in to show their appreciation from this clip from 2010. Two commenters even noted it's a tradition to watch this every year before the Kentucky Derby. And I promise, no one is making the Birchum racehorse joke part of their Kentucky Derby tradition. Alright, I have no way of proving this, but it would explain Birchum 2024's lackluster writing. There's not a lot of scaling back for budget reasons. Past episode 1, the show regularly devolves into outright PNG animation for cutaway gags, so rewriting for budget isn't an option. They'll just skimp on the animation. My initial guess that the opening scene was changed for budget reasons has to be wrong. I think episode 1 is based on an earlier draft of the 2011 pilot. I have no idea how much executive pushback, if any, exists with the Daily Wire. But if we look at the IMDb credits, it seems Carolla is the only one on the writing/directing staff who has an established footing in comedy. Let's take a closer look. Showrunner and writer Nate Adams' only other comedy credit is serving as an executive producer for Adam Carolla's stand-up specials. Much of his work is very brocore, movies and documentaries about NASCAR, guns, and MMA. Manuel Morales has only directed TV movies transmitidas en España en Español. No idea their genre synopsis, since they haven't been added to IMDb. Before Birchum 24, his latest film credit was from 2013, and I'll talk more about Spain's involvement with this show later. Mark Hoffmeyer has had a solid career in writing children's television programs, Reboot, Spider-Man the Animated Series, various Lego cartoons, a handful of Power Ranger series, and most recently a steady stream of Netflix cartoons for preschoolers. Mike Lynch's only credits are as a producer for Carolla's stand-up special, and appearing as himself on Pop Culture Crisis. Byron Kavanaugh's IMDb credits also show a background in children's entertainment, albeit less illustrious than Hoffmeyer. Kavanaugh's most notable works include Marmaduke 2022, Cat the Dog, Gamer's Guide to Pretty Much Everything, and Kickin' It. In other words, Carolla is the man here, This isn't a team built for feedback and collaboration to make the plot stronger and the jokes funnier. It is indistinguishable from a group of yes men who will roll with whatever Carolla fires off. If Adam Carolla kicks down the door and declares episode 1 is going to be closer to what I originally wrote for the 2011 pilot, who in that room is going to object? There is definitely residue from the 2011 version, and not just in the few recycled quips from the pilot. The B plot of episode 2 features Birchum's wife, Wendy, going to the spa with her friend Dina. Wendy, who's inexplicably very pro-Obama, is shocked that Dina, who was black, did not vote for Obama. They argue as a typical liberal strawman and a black Republican, and it is as boring as it sounds. I don't know why the show needed to address Obama's presidency in 2024. The only reason I can imagine is that this was a plot thread they wanted to use in 2011, and now it can finally come into fruition. By the way, here's another unique disappointment. Wendy's sex appeal was turned way down for 2024. It sounds like 2011 Wendy was voiced by Pamela Adlon, and there's no official confirmation, just listen, it sounds like her. And yes, her sex appeal may be lost on some viewers who can only see her as a post-op bimbofied Bobby Hill, but her cans are big enough that anyone with an appreciation for cartoon MILFs would easily bookmark her Rule 34 page. I hate the show too much to double check, but I can't remember 2024 Wendy ever showing decent cleavage. It's definitely not a part of her default outfit, which is another example of the supposedly no limits Daily Wire playing it way safer than network TV. She shows a little more skin in the spa episode, but her transformation into a political strawman is a way bigger turnoff than the Bobby Hill voice. Now, I do want to give some nods of acknowledgement for Birchum 24, what it did right, and why someone might enjoy it. I tried this for all of my reviews, even the crap I hate, so let's give it a go. The few positive reviews are mostly from guys who had a shop teacher or dad like Birchum, happy that there's a show that's not afraid to tell it like it is. And plenty of reviews mention they're happy Roseanne Barr has been rehabilitated from that kooky QAnon commune upstate. Hopeful she's now on the path to reintegrating with polite society. There's not a lot said about its storytelling, just guys in the choir happy they found a preacher. Since none of the Birchum appreciators can say anything good about its story, I will. One thing I found interesting about 24 Birchum was the family dynamic. Wendy is Birchum's second wife, and it's pretty interesting that a show that's all about quote-unquote trad values is so open about the protagonist being divorced. It's not much, I mean, most people are fine with divorce, but it is a neat detail, and I wonder if he'll ever get any in-universe pushback for being divorced. I am reminded of Stan Smith, the protagonist of American Dad. He begins the series as strongly xenophobic, but over the course of the series, eventually grows more tolerant of homosexuality. There is even an episode, I can't find which one, where he says pretty directly that he used to be anti-gay, but he's now changed. It was an interesting moment in the world of animated sitcoms where status quo is God. Stan is meant to be the stand-in for the mainstream American Republican values. The series ran long enough that the general consensus on homosexuality had shifted, so the character himself reflected that. I don't expect Birchum to have the same self-awareness or potential for growth, but just giving him one thing that might offend someone a notch more conservative was an unexpected twist. Same thing can be said about Birchum's vibrant friend group. His best friend is black, and tied for second is an Asian man and a gay man. Even if everyone's different, they get along just fine. It is good when a show features different types of characters to create unique comedy dynamics, and whether or not they executed on this is another subject. But back to the divorce. Birchum brings his adult son to this new family, and his wife brings a 9-year-old daughter. Wendy is closer to her new son in that she's fully supportive of his streaming career, while Birchum is closer to his new daughter. They bond over a shared interest in woodworking. There's not a lot of media about blended families, and they're making the most of it with this interesting, unexpected dynamic. I've never seen a show where a parent dotes on their stepchild, feels a bit more agitation over their bio kid, and honestly, that's kind of neat. While I'm dishing out compliments, the daughter Jeannie needs to be mentioned. She is the best holdover from the 2011 version, playing out exactly the same in both iterations. Both our kids were unusually enthusiastic about woodworking. What's interesting is since she's a child, she's not afforded the same privileges as her dad, so she can't just blow up and get angry to own the libs. Although she's similarly frustrated with the way the world works. In episode 1's B plot, she is livid that her mother repainted a mahogany fireplace, protests this terrible design choice by handcuffing herself to the fireplace. It's a pretty far departure from the typical Birchum scene I outlined earlier in this video, and she's a character who takes more losses than wins since, again, just a kid. Season 2 has the chance to be great if the focus shifts more to Jeannie. Now, I'm not holding my breath for such a radical change since biggest thing that'll make the show better is a stronger writer's room, but this thread has the strongest potential. Alright, I've given a smattering of examples to show why 2011 Birchum was so much better. And we can go all day saying why this joke worked and that one didn't. There is a core structural difference that explains everything. 2011 Birchum works because Birchum is able to be wrong. Let me explain, since I used the big font for that. 2024 Birchum exists as an angry power fantasy. When a student acts dumb, he tells them they are dumb. When he's confronted with the workplace DEI officer, he gets belligerent and yells, and so on and so on. 2011 Birchum is still an enormous asshole boomer, but he's able to admit when he's wrong, and more subtly, but just as importantly, 2011 Birchum is also able to show politeness to his enemies and keep some of his opinions to himself. I'll give you some examples. During the mandated DEI counseling, the counselor asks if Birchum has ever been insensitive. He lies to the counselor, saying he's never been insensitive. The audience is treated to a series of cutaway jokes of Birchum openly expressing a variety of xenophobic beliefs. Birchum shows a good deal of eye-rolling towards one of his students, who's a typical slacker who's always on his phone. When Birchum erroneously claims that George Washington Carver invented peanut butter, the slacker student uses his phone to look up this fun fact and correct Birchum. He's surprised he was mistaken, but doesn't take it personally. Okay, I've had plenty of asshole teachers dig their heels in when corrected, so this scene is a good way to get Birchum some legitimate cool points. And Birchum was able to admit when his son is doing pretty alright. Okay, let me explain that one. Both Birchums harbor a disproportionate amount of frustration with their son, Eddie. In the pilot, Eddie's only scene begins with his dad telling him how he's a screw-up and a failure. This is interrupted when a girl in a tube top emerges from Eddie's bedroom to give him a kiss. Birchum stares in amazement before saying, "Damn, it's working." Now, he's not gonna apologize to his son or take back what he said. He immediately changes the subject and grabs a beer. But these little moments of weakness make all the difference. Any moments of humility flat out do not happen with 2024 Birchum. 24 Birchum is never confronted with anything that would make him challenge his worldview, since everyone opposing him is a big blubbering idiot and the narrative is content to leave it at that. Without any pushback, all we get is a man who's angry at the world. The final product is less of a satire and more of an incredibly sad wish fulfillment. Now, there's two fun facts about Birchum that I need to share that I think will help explain this cartoon a little better. The first being that there is a third Birchum cartoon. Mr. Birchum has been a character Adam Carolla has been workshopping across mediums for decades. And besides the 2011 pilot, there's also a TV movie he directed titled The Birchums. IMDb has this one still image, and the characters listed are comparable to the other versions of Mr. Birchum. Right now, it's lost media. And number two, the funniest joke was in the credits. There is a blink and you'll miss it Easter egg in the credits of Mr. Birchum 2024. And it's that Mr. Birchum was animated by Wise Blue Studios, located in Spain. The Daily Wire, with all their America First bluster, outsourced all of their animation jobs to Europeans. I don't want to hear about how outsourcing is standard animation practice. Spare me the details of the production process. They are hypocrites, and that is the punchline. I guess all of the Birchum budget went to employing Roseanne Barr, so poor little Adam Carolla had no choice but to venture overseas for his Toon Boom rigging. There's been a lot of grumblings over this cartoon's quote-unquote wokeness, and honestly, it is not a big deal. I just really don't care what Adam Carolla writes. It does not make a difference if he's writing his self-insert OC to have a black best friend co-sign on all his boomerisms. This is not the junk we should be rallying behind. The bigger dunk is in the show's production, and it has direct, real-world consequences. Handing jobs over to foreigners and lapping up international tax incentives is a way bigger act of hypocrisy than anything he's written in the script. And to further contradict his trad values, this cartoon is ugly. If Birchum insists that the world's gone crazy and things were better back in the day, it's certainly pretty fucking rich that you're gonna tell me this through a hideous puppet rigging animation. It's an art style that is reflective of the worst in modern animation. And even funnier that you couldn't Go down to Trader Joe's, find an underemployed cashier with an art degree, pay him a few grand to grind out your Toon Boom slop next time he has the weekend off. I'm going to bring up Family Guy again, but remember the 2009 episode Road to the Multiverse? It was an ambitious episode where Stewie and Brian use a magic remote to travel to a series of parallel universes, one of which was the Disney universe. The sequence was animated entirely in Los Angeles, instead of the typical production pipeline where South Korea handles the grunt work. They needed the audience to really feel that classic Disney magic, so the animators went all out. And I remember the reaction to this. The fandom was thrilled by its mere existence. Deemed by many to be the most epic moment in Family Guy, nay, television history. But there was a bittersweet feeling under the surface. Sure, this sequence looked unbelievably cool. But why is the best-looking American animation happening? Because Family Guy felt like doing a bit. 3D animation had established its dominance in theatrical releases, with 2D already classified as an endangered species. Family Guy being the best of the best, even momentarily, felt like a death knell. 3 months after this episode aired, we'd see a brief return to form with Disney's The Princess and the Frog. 2 years later, Disney treated us with the less hyped, hand-drawn Winnie the Pooh movie, and since then, crickets. Disney has abandoned what made them great, and that sucks. Today, 3D is king, and puppet-rigged animation is no longer an indication that a show is laughably low budget. Instead, it's just how 2D cartoons look nowadays. If you want hand-drawn, you have to turn to anime or learn how to stomach CalArt style. There's really no hope. Wait, what's that in the distance? Do I hear a legally distinct catch a sound alike? So American 2D animation isn't dead. Vivzy Pop is here to save us all with her beautifully rendered sparkle dogs and cuddly imp yowie. I won't bore you with the bootstrap theory or suck Vivzy's dick too hard, but she had to bust serious ass to make her cartoon real, and her fanbase shows there is an audience hungry for carefully rendered 2D animation. Now let me bring the focus back to Birchum. It is absolutely hilarious that Adam Carolla, an established millionaire, a definitive Hollywood celebrity, finally making his quote-unquote passion project, made a worse cartoon than a bisexual art student half his age. That is funny. I am laughing because it didn't have to be bad. Unlike Vivzy Pop, he has the clout and the resources to make a good cartoon. I'm not even here to reiterate what I said about the 2011 pilot, which, by the way, used hand-drawn animation instead of that puppet rigging bullshit. Once again, ironically proving its own point that things were better in the past. But okay, let's look at the heart of the 2024 series. A whole lot of angry yelling at sniveling strawmen. That is truly in his heart what he wanted to make, so be it. Because there's another cartoon that could be described as a whole lot of yelling at idiots. Ren and Stimpy. John Kricfalusi's entire body of work can be summed up as the author's thinly disguised daddy issues, and even a barrage of PDF accusations haven't budged this cartoon from the canon of Western Sakuga. It wasn't just of the mindset that you don't need a script for a cartoon. It was actively anti-writer, pro-animator. Plenty of people have this as their favorite cartoon ever. And if we zoom out, you could summarize Ren and Stimpy exactly the same as Mr. Birchum. So with the right art style, a cartoon that's so full of vitriol with zero nuance can clearly still work. So Adam Carolla's confused the writer's room for a therapist's office? Fine. Hand your one-sided strawman script off to someone who can draw. Let him go ham on the animation. Yes, it will be more expensive. Yes, it will be harder to recoup the loss. And I thought this was your pet project, man. I thought you had been trying to get this off the ground since 2011. Finally, you have been gifted a platform and a 9 p.m. time slot. And you're gonna have it look like that? Rigged animation? I know you, of all people, could dump a couple wheelbarrows of cash into this and have it look way better. Take the financial loss for the greater culture war that Daily Wire is constantly hand-wringing over. You want to make the libs seethe? Then make a cartoon that looks better than anything they've ever seen or could possibly hope to make. Show the world that traditional art is alive and well, and your team is doing laps around the other guys. Instead, you presented the world with this ugly fucking yawn of a show with zero jokes. If you've accomplished anything, it's that I now empathize with your boomer protagonist. I am pretty pissed off at this flagrant laziness.